Good morning, everyone. It's so good to have you with us today at Crystal Coast Unity. Um, I love hearing Deidre sing the beautiful music from another musician that we love so much, Nancy. It's a beautiful bridge, right? I love it. So, did you realize that we have a lot to learn from Piglet? Okay, let me explain a little bit. Do most of you know at least a little about the Winnie the Pooh stories? Well, in any case, allow me to introduce you to a few of the main characters: Pooh, Eeyore, Tigger, Heffalumps, and Piglet. Pooh, short for Pooh Bear, which is short for Winnie the Pooh, is an emotionally balanced, confident, happy little bear. Pooh enjoys his simple pleasures, especially honey, and has a positive, upbeat personality that sees life as one big adventure. Excuse me. Eeyore is a donkey. He's always negative. He bashes everything, mistrusts everything, expects the worst, and so he sees the worst. Eeyore is a whiner and a complainer. He wouldn't see prosperity if it smacked him upside the head. As Pooh says, Eeyore is not always like that. Sometimes he's worse. Tigger is a little tiger. Pooh calls him bouncy. He's always enthusiastic, always upbeat, but tends to leap before he looks. He lives in his own world and believes he can do anything. Poor Tigger, the grass is always greener. He starts many things and finishes few of them, I'm afraid. Pooh says Tigger understands things so quickly that he never learns anything. You also need to know a bit about heffalumps. Heffalumps are imaginary monsters. Pooh is always trying to trap them, and Piglet is always thinking of ways to avoid them. Piglet. Well, Piglet is a very small animal, a tiny pig. He feels insignificant in the world. He's quite sensitive and timid about life and craves security. Unlike Pooh, who simply is and does, Piglet agonizes. Here's a story from Winnie the Pooh that shows what Piglet is like. By and by, Piglet woke up from a good night's sleep. As soon as he woke up, he said to himself, "Oh." Then he said bravely, "Yes." And then still more bravely, "Quite so." But inside, he didn't feel very brave, for the word that was really jiggling about in his brain was heffalumps. What was a heffalump like? Was it fierce? Did it come when you whistled? And can you see it coming? Was it fond of pigs at all? And if it was fond of pigs, did it make any difference what sort of pig? Do you see what we might have in common with Piglet? We try so hard to stay positive, but as soon as we let our guard down, there we go again, trying to head off the heffalumps by planning, obsessing, worrying, and fretting. Most of us piglets spend a lot of time imagining what might happen, and a considerable amount of time thinking about how to defend ourselves from whatever threat we're being warned about today. The higher the stakes, the more worried we become. We're like the archer who, competing for a clay pot, shoots accurately and effortlessly, his skill and concentration unimpeded. When the prize is changed to a brass ornament, his hands begin to shake. When it is changed to gold, he starts to sweat and squints anxiously at the target as if he were going blind. Now, mind you, his abilities have not deteriorated, but his belief in them has. He allows the supposed value of an external reward to make him tense, cloud his vision, and affect his performance. Well, the stakes are sure high these days. And just about all of us are feeling the stress. Of course, we get a lot of help from the world for staying on high alert. The other night, I plugged my phone into charge. Immediately, a very loud, strident, anxious voice screamed, "Warning! Danger! Unplug your phone immediately. Moisture has been detected in your device." It was a shocking experience. Holding my breath, I snatched the phone charger out of the outlet, thinking about reports of phones catching fire and houses burning down as a result, all in one split second. The next morning, I heard an interview with Woodward and Costa about their new book called Peril. Apparently, the final phrase in the entire book is, "The peril continues." Following that, there was a report on COVID saying that to date, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Americans have died from the virus. Next came a report on the South and the East that are flooded and the burning in the West. Day in and day out, we received warnings of catastrophes ahead, whether from insurrectionists, disease, the government, climate change, even the gun-toting neighbor at the Kroger food store. Given this environment, living a peaceful, friendly life, well, I believe it's downright heroic, which got me to thinking about Piglet. He wakes up in the morning feeling pretty good, but almost immediately begins worrying about heffalumps. Now he's scared and anxious, but even so, he gets up, gets dressed, and goes out into the 100-acre wood to find a new adventure. Day after day, he moves through fear, worry, and uncertainty and steps up to life. When young Christopher Robin calls him for action, Piglet follows, cautiously, step by step, at a pace that allows him to learn and grow. Piglet knows he is a very small animal. He has humility and an open mind and the courage to venture out of his little house because life is calling to him, and that call is even louder than his fearful thoughts. And you know something? Every single time he does this, he grows in confidence, faith, courage, and perspective. Every time he steps across that threshold, his fears become just a little less powerful. Until there comes a day when he goes outside and sees not just perils, but friends and beauty and interesting things to do and learn. In the evening, he returns home, tired, hungry, and satisfied that it has been a good day after all. The spiritual faculty of order encompasses the understanding that life is an evolutionary process. We wonder why all the chaos right now. Well, it's really kind of obvious when you stop to think about it. We are facing the beliefs, the character flaws, and the fears in ourselves and in our culture that have been holding us back. It's not easy to face these things. You know that. It hurts. These beliefs and habits go way back. Some have been passed on from our ancestors through DNA. So we're in pain. And chronic pain can make us do some pretty bizarre and destructive things. But then you know what? We have to face that behavior and decide if this is who we really want to be. Pain can cause chaos, but it can also push us forward. Doesn't transformation often begin with feeling the discomfort of the status quo until it has worn us down and made us willing to risk change? Evolution pretty much never occurs in a straight line. 2 steps forward and then a step back. The clearest example I could think of is how we, at least those of my age or around that, thought we had overcome the worst of our racism, as demonstrated by the election of the first Black president. But look out. The backlash has been fierce, and we're dismayed to find out that for many of us, that terrible, gnawing fear of the other has only gone underground. Clearly, there is much more healing to do. But in coming to terms with this, we grow painstakingly, inch by inch. So, is there any chance that we can speed up our personal and cultural development? Futurists like Barbara Marx Hubbard and Jean Houston teach something they call conscious evolution. They say that a clear vision of what we want to create for ourselves and our world will move us forward much more quickly and efficiently than defensive reactions and focus on symptoms will ever do. Haven't you noticed that when your actions are driven by your pain, they can sometimes make matters worse? Come on, you and I know that to be the case. And haven't you noticed how desperately we avoid delving into those underlying issues that are causing the problem in the first place? So really, the doorway to conscious evolution is the decision to be pulled by a vision rather than to continue being pushed by pain. Creating a clear vision for our lives and our world is big work. My mentor, EJ, says, these are the times that unity was made for. We in unity are called to have a leading role because we have the tools, don't we? We've been talking about them for months. Intelligence, imagination, wisdom, love, power, faith, strength. Our God is goodness and love. And we live in a universe designed for our success. We know that all human beings are created in this image, and so our core essence is also goodness and love. We know that God lives in us and works through us. And we know that what we consistently think about is what we create. A clear, detailed, positive vision held steadfastly in mind is the most powerfully creative thought there is. Focus on a catastrophic future has had most of us living defensively, dreading what may come and doing whatever we have to do to dull the fear. What if we could tap into our faculty of imagination and develop pictures of our families and neighborhoods, towns, state, communities, country, and world operating from life-affirming principles, attitudes, and values? What if we could create a whole movie reel of these influences and these images? Wouldn't it make a difference if we could hold our focus on them? I'm not just talking about wishful thinking here. What if most of us could be like Piglet? humble, knowing that in the scheme of things, we're very small animals. But day by day, nurturing our vision, then venturing forth, accepting what is, offering whatever it is we have to give, and talking with others about ways to create the family, community, and country we want. You know, we think we see things as they are, but how we think things are is mostly a perception formed by our conditioning. We have allowed others to tell us what is real and true. Yes, we need the facts, but the interpretation of these facts is up to us. This I know. The conclusions, plans, and actions we take, when the facts are processed through an evolved consciousness in a fertile ground of clear vision, will make us extraordinary humans living extraordinary lives. And in the process, modeling the way forward for anyone who is willing and able to see. Many spiritual teachers, and I've argued about this so many times, many spiritual teachers call life a dream or an illusion. I think those of you in Course in Miracles know what I mean. What they mean by this is that we don't see things as they are. We see them as we are. The Eeyore in us sees little point in doing much of anything, since things always turn out badly. Our Tigger jumps impulsively into every new idea or quick fix that strikes our fancy, without ever looking deeply, without understanding our motives or considering the consequences. Our Pooh is a wide-eyed optimist who tends to live in denial, because our Pooh's objective is to feel good all the time. But our Piglet, well, Piglet is a Taoist. Taoism is an ancient Chinese philosophy that teaches one to live in harmony with what is. Loosely translated, the Tao means virtue in action. At the core of the philosophy is the belief that the world was designed for the success of its inhabitants, and that at the core of our problems, and this is really strikes me, that at the core of all our problems is the struggle to separate ourselves from life as it is. In other words, avoidance of problems and painful feelings. The Tao is often called the way, though it does not teach the existence of God per se. It teaches that there is an overarching spiritual power at work in the natural world that harmonizes all things, and that the way to happiness and success is to observe and follow nature's pattern. The famous Chinese teacher Lao Tzu called this power the mother of 10,000 things. He considered it a feminine power, gentle like flowing water, humble and generous like a fertile valley feeding all who come to it. It is hidden, subtle, and mysterious like a landscape glimpsed through a mist. It is neutral and balanced, taking no sides and granting no authority. To the Taoist, unhappiness is the result of our being guided by our illusions and the mistaken belief that humankind should or can control life, that we can outthink, outproduce, outmaneuver, and overpower nature. In Western culture, people usually do not set as their intention being in harmony with what is. Oh no. Instead, we decide what we like and don't like. and then greedily grasp all we can of the former and do whatever we need to do to annihilate the latter. Can you see this? Taoism teaches the principle of reality appreciation. Condensed to its core, reality appreciation is a threefold way of life: observe, deduce, and apply. Observe what's around you, putting aside as best you can your previous conceptions and emotional reactions, and ask yourself, what is really happening here? Find the simplicity within the complexity. Deduce. Use intuition and logic to understand what you're seeing. Taoist Benjamin Huff says there is a vital difference. I love this. There is a vital difference between the whole reasoner and the left brain technician. Then apply. Accepting what is. Take the actions you are led to take, applying the smallest amount of interference and effort. Wow. The promise of Taoism is that once we make a habit of observing, deducing, and applying, we will experience the way opening before us, leading us to a deeper appreciation of life and a closer connection with the divine. At times, we may even feel that we have entered some sort of other dimension, but we haven't really. We're simply seeing, experiencing things as they are, rather than the way our finite minds and other people tell us they are. The difference between the two is considerable. For one thing, we will leave the land of either or and enter, perhaps for the first time, the land of both and. Instead of hearing the words or the music, we will experience both. Lao Tzu says that the main reason some people are unable to follow the way is that they are unable to see it. And the reason they can't see it is that they are stuck in either or, black and white thinking. Taoism is moderate, the middle way that Jesus spoke of. It's right balance of passivity and action. To a Taoist, highly esoteric, reject the physical world spirituality would be an extremist absurdity. Instead, a Taoist would say, carefully observe the natural world around you, learn from it, and live in harmony with it, and practice the morality of modesty, moderation, compassion, and consideration. Look for the truth, not just the facts, and you will live lightly and spontaneously. When we take time to carefully observe nature, we see that everything in it is designed to succeed, including some things that we might judge to be inconvenient or bad. In the natural world, things are neither good nor bad. They just are. We would slow down, resist our snap judgments, resist our old conditioning, and observe deeply. Things as they are might very well show us the way to success and prosperity. I have a couple examples. Many centuries ago, Chinese Empress Si Ling-chi overheard complaints that worms or moth larvae were devouring the leaves of the beautiful royal mulberry trees. So she went out to see what was happening. And she watched the larvae as they spun their cocoons of strong, shimmering threads. Observing their movements as they spun, she conceived a way to extract the fibers and weave clothing material from them. Her observations and experiments led to the cultivation of what was to become the most highly treasured of the world's natural fibers, the magical material we call silk. And only 40 years ago, the Swiss engineer George de Maistre found upon returning from a hike that those nasty old cockleburs were clinging to his clothing. But unlike countless others of us who have cursed the prickly seed pods, he picked them off and discarded them. He asked himself, why do these things stick like this? Examining them closely, he found that they were covered with tiny hooks, which had become embedded in the loops of his clothing fabric. He wondered if it would be possible to develop fasteners based on this hook and loop principle, which would, by their nature, be more flexible than any other type of fastener currently in use. From his watching and wondering came Velcro, with its thousands of practical applications. Perhaps it is not necessity that is the mother of invention after all. Perhaps close observation and imagination deserve the credit. Living beyond good and bad thinking, we are able to discern the order in what is there and make the most of it. Taoists say life is like a ride in a canoe. Sometimes the water is calm and the ride peaceful. And at times like these, we tend to kick back and settle into complacency. But then the canoe hits some white water and we are suddenly wide awake and operating on all cylinders. There's good news and bad news about white water. The bad news is that it's dangerous. The canoe may capsize. One might get hurt, even killed. The good news is that white water can be a lot of fun. It is exciting and challenging, and one can make rapid progress moving through it. Interesting how the most dangerous part of the canoe ride is also the most rewarding. Well, sometimes the process of evolution is like white water. Major transitions are times of crisis. Now, we generally don't like the experience of crisis or even the sound of the word. However, the Chinese language presents us with an interesting perspective. In Chinese, the word crisis is formed by combining two characters, one meaning danger and the other meaning opportunity. So this is the Tao, the way of harmony in the natural world. Observe, deduce, apply. The way of reality, appreciation, embracing things as they are. And the way of effortless action, cooperation, gentleness, and simplicity. It is very wise to realize that we, like Piglet, are very small creatures, but that does not mean we are powerless. I'll close with this from Lao Tzu's great work, the Tao Te Ching. Know the masculine, but keep to the feminine. Become a river to all under heaven. As a river flows, move in constant virtue. Return to the inner state. Know the light, but keep to the shadow. Become a pattern to all under heaven, as a pattern repeats itself. Act in constant virtue, returning to the beginning. Know the high, but keep to the low. Become a valley to all under heaven. As a valley provides it in abundance, give in constant virtue. Return to natural simplicity. Thus, the wise become great by becoming small. So starting today, let's run a grand experiment. Instead of spending so much of our thought trying to figure out how to protect ourselves from whatever or whoever, let's use some of it to create a detailed vision. Imagine seeing yourself as a vibrating center of energy, pure potential, waiting like a powerful sports car idling in neutral for direction from its driver, our conscious, creative mind. And so, for our meditation today, I'd like to read to you Amanda Gorman's powerful poem, The Hill We Climb. I think I've read it 2 dozen times because it's such a beautiful example of reality appreciation, along with a detailed vision and a challenge to us all. It's an inspiration that puts our evolutionary process in perspective. Just think for a minute when you think that you have not got much power or influence. Just think about how many people have been touched by this one young woman's gift. Deidre will lead us into meditation with a beautiful song. Beautiful. So as I read to you this beautiful poem, I invite you to just relax, center in your heart, and just allow the words to wash over you. The hill we climb. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We brave the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. And yet the dawn was ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we weathered and witnessed a nature that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We are the successors of a country in a time where a skinny Black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gaze, not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide Because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew. That even as we hurt, we hoped. That even as we tired, we tried. Then we'll ever, forever, be tied together victorious. Not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. This is the promise of the glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare. It's because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith, we trust. For while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be heirs of such a terrifying hours. But within it, we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and joy and laughter to ourselves. So while once we ask, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move toward what shall be. A country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Become the future. Our blunders will become their burdens. But one thing is certain. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. Every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the golden hills of the West. We will rise from the windswept Northeast where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states, and we will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover. And every known nook of our nation, and every corner called our country, our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade of flame unafraid. The new day balloons as we free it, for there is always light if we're only brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it. And so it is. Amen. And now, Dedri.
A whole new world, 100,000 things to see. We are like shooting stars, we've come so far, we can't go back to where we used to be. A whole new world with new horizons to pursue. Let's chase them anywhere, make time to spare, and let me share this whole new world with you. A whole new world, that's where we'll be. A better place, a wondrous place.